Okay, so I just started recording. This is our third podcast, and this
Hi
is the Jack and
everyone.
Jill show.
Hi everyone. I'm Jill.
And I'm Jack. So we were just reading about the 1920s and how the Dow Jones Industrial Average wasn't really a significant marker back before the 1920s, right? And then right around the 1920, after the influenza, or in that case, it was the swine flu,
It was the
Spanish flu,
Spanish flu.
which isn't it like an offshoot of, well, the swine flu is an offshoot of that, isn't it?
I cannot confirm that.
That's my understanding that they're related. But in any case, immediately after that, it seems like the stock market went way up, and all of a sudden, the commoners, the everyday people, got acquainted with indexes because, why invest in a specific company that you researched when you can just invest in an index because it's all a bubble, right?
Yeah.
And I was just thinking to myself, like, oh my God, that's exactly what's going on right now. Um, most
So,
most of those Robin Hooders, they're investing in indexes. They're not investing in specific companies.
are they?
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. One of the interesting things we read in this somebody's blog post about this time was that at the time people were mostly investing in individual railroad stocks, right?
Yeah.
And industrial companies were kind of speculative bets at the time.
Oh yeah. Well, because they were the new thing, and I guess because remember the first companies is this is something that a lot of people may not remember, but in America at first you weren't able to do um, unlimited corporations, right? So an unlimited corporation right now is a corporation that is capable of engaging in any kind of business that it wants to engage into. And it's able to do so because we have the unlimited corporations. Back in the day, corporations could only be set up for very specific purposes.
Oh, so none of this vertical or horizontal integration, right? Is that what you're saying?
No. It was more like you would make a corporation to build a bridge,
Mm-hmm.
but then once you built that specific bridge, the corporation was basically over, right? Like for instance, there was a corporation to operate the South Pacific Railroad or whatever. Like you know how like they had the different rail lines, right?
Yeah.
So you would create a corporation to build and operate a specific
Chunk.
chunk of the railroad,
Mm-hmm.
but you wouldn't like be able to, for instance, then extend and I mean, and that happened over time that these corporations became kind of like perpetual corporation. But this idea of a perpetual corporation is actually kind of something relatively new. Even back in the day when the Dutch had their corporations, right? They
Mm-hmm.
were specific purpose corporations.
So they were more like project-based corporations?
Yeah, this
Okay.
is why the East India Company was the East India Company, and then when they were no longer part of India, like they didn't continue as the East India Company who now makes phones. They just died out because the corporate charters back then, right? Where in like this is why in law when you file for a corporation for purpose, you put to engage in all legal businesses or engage in all legal actions. So
Mm-hmm.
I forget what the actual phraseology is, but it doesn't really matter. To engage in all legal activities, right? But when you do file for a corporation, it actually specifically asks you the purpose of the corporation and the duration of the corporation, right? And you can say something like to build a bridge 5 years, right? That's going to be 5 years and to build a bridge. And you can make a corporation that literally just does that, right? And that
Mm-hmm.
was the default back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
And then we got these unlimited corporations.
Oh, when did we get these unlimited corporations?
I forgot.
Was it something that came out of the 70s or the 80s?
It was the Rockefeller, I believe, who actually and then this
Oh,
may
so
be
it goes way
incorrect.
back.
Yeah, but I think it was the Rockefeller who convinced the government to create first these limited purpose and then unlimited corporations because he was, I think, really interested in creating corporations to well, to grow your wealth, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't remember what the year it was in, but sometimes in the 1800s,
Mm-hmm.
in the second part of the 1800s, that we got these unlimited, basically, corporations. And first of them were railroads, because that was the easiest way to form a corporation back then, because that was a large enough enterprise where you actually needed it, and it was more difficult back then to create one. You could create companies back then, but companies were these limit like company. If you could start a partnership, for instance, right? But in a partnership, you would be liable for the business of the partnership, right? And that was considered to be a good form, like a good idea. Like, you wanted business people to be responsible for the companies that they run.
Mm-hmm.
But then when you got to the point of railroads, they required so much money and so much investment, or dams or bridges, things like that, that it would be simply not really feasible that a small group of people could put together enough money to run a corporation, for instance, that builds a railroad across America. So they needed to new business structure, basically, to attract more investment, essentially.
Mm.
It wasn't. I guess it wasn't that new. It was just new, the fact that they could continue forever, because back in Britain, like, we remember how we learned about.
Were corporations? I'm sorry to interrupt you and cut off your story. Were corporations considered like real, like they're like not human, but what is it that they?
Well, right now, people's the whole argument is that corporations should have the same rights as individuals, at least in terms of speech.
Okay.
And that comes of that Citizen United movement, decision that money is speech. So in political, so it's okay for corporations to donate large amounts of money to super PACs that can use that money as speech and advertisement and
Mm-hmm.
all that stuff, all that jazz. But that wasn't the purpose of the corporations to begin with. I don't think corporations back then really participated politically all that much in the public. Obviously, the people running those corporations had all the politicians in their back pocket, but that's a separate question.
So the 20th century saw the corporation become, a tool, basically used by people who wanted to build things, to becoming this monster that it is.
Yeah.
In the present, right?
And I mean, we had
unlimited power.
we did have corporations in Britain, for instance, right?
Mm-hmm.
They were
Like you said, like the South Sea company.
limited partnerships.
Yeah.
But and they did sell stocks, because remember, we were reading it in the context of slavery,
Mm-hmm.
and how, even though Britain didn't have slavery at the time, but there were a bunch of bullshit artists going around England trying to convince people that the black slaves from Africa were jumping on the boats to come over to America because their life was better, primarily because the British companies ran the actual ran the slave lines from Africa to United States,
Mm-hmm.
and this was in the 1700s, I believe. And they were like, no, we don't want to give up on this. This is amazing. This is profitable.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, the slaves want to go.
Mm-hmm.
Because their lives are so much better there. They get a
Mm-hmm.
house and a retirement and everything. Yeah, it was a bunch of bullshit. And but obviously back then, you can't fault people too much, because if you live in England, and how would you know? It would be
You won't.
it would be next to impossible for you to actually.
Unless you take a ship and adventure out to America.
But that was incredibly, back then. It was dangerous and expensive.
Probably pricey, yeah.
Incredibly expensive. It's something
Yeah.
that only very wealthy people would be able to afford. It's kind of like flying first class right now around the world or something like that. It's probably, like, in today's money, it's probably easily $50 to $100,000, like $50,000 probably.
That expensive?
Well, in today's money, it's hard to compare because they just had that much less stuff back then.
Right.
But it would take you essentially a full year's worth of wages
Oh.
to come to America.
Oh, so this is why Jack was very happy to win that ticket to go on that to sail on the Titanic.
Well, and that was a little bit later, so that they all these steamships they brought down the cost
Oh, I
of that.
see.
So that would be maybe equivalent to like $20,000 or
Mm-hmm.
something like that. Again, maybe like half a year worth of wages,
Mm.
something like. But it was a significant. It was very expensive. Even once we had airplanes, it would still take you like a month's or 2 months' wages just to cross the ocean. Probably 2 months' wages and that's like well, they didn't have classes back then. For the most part, they didn't have classes back then. Everything was first class essentially
Right.
because everything was really expensive.
You know what's also interesting? That in this blog post that we were reading about the 1920s,
Mm-hmm.
at that time the railroad companies were considered the best investment of the time, and I feel like railroad the equivalent of railroad companies today are the likes of tech companies like Microsoft, Google, so information companies like Amazon. Is Amazon and cloud?
Amazon, I guess,
Amazon
would be
is an information company
well.
because they
Amazon
have Amazon Cloud.
but Amazon also is the closest, not competitor, but like the closest comparison because they're a logistics company. Essentially, Amazon is a logistics company
Mm-hmm.
that does other things, and the railroads were back then an information and logistics companies
Mm-hmm.
primarily because
Mm-hmm.
they connected the coasts,
Mm-hmm.
they delivered newspaper,
Mm-hmm.
right? They
Yeah.
they delivered all these services. They allowed the telegraph lines to work because through a lot of the country, in order to run the telegraph lines, you would have to run them along the railways. So that way, when maintenance needs to be done on the telegraph lines, you can take a private train out there to fix the lines.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's how they would do it.
Yeah.
Because this is before we had roads between all the cities and all the states, right? So even if you had a car, like let's say in 1900, right? If in 1900 you had a car, first of all, your car was incredibly unreliable by the nature that kind of new. It was very hard to drive. Would get maybe 100 to 120 miles to a tank of gas, and gas was very hard to come by because it was brand new,
Mm-hmm.
right? So really, and there were no roads. So you would drive out of the city, and when you drive out of the city right now, you hit the freeway and you go on this nice paved road for forever and ever and ever, right? Back then, you would get out of the city, the roads would just end. You would have some logging roads and some passages and stuff like that, but for the most part, and some carriageway roads, but they wouldn't be like paved and stuff. Especially as you go west. Like the more west you would go, the less roads you would have.
Mm-hmm.
So the main access to the west was through the
Railroads.
railroads,
Yeah.
and they were seen as the kind of like they were like the internet of the that era.
Yeah. What do you think are the speculative bets of today? Back then, it was the industrial companies.
That's a good question.
I think the
I
speculative
guess
bets in today's day and age are biotech companies, to be honest. Also companies that want to do any sort of AI. But we don't have, I don't know. I think AI and biotech will be very important in this century.
well, let's look at it this way. So if you invested in industrial companies in 1920, so GE,
DuPont, I don't know.
DuPont, if they existed, I don't know who existed back then. It would be
Yeah.
interesting to find out. But some of these industrial manufacturers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, Actually, can you look up,
Yeah, I'm gonna see when these
or just
companies.
look up 1920 Dow Jones Industrial Average, and who's in it?
Okay, like the Dow Jones
Yeah,
companies in 1920s.
in 1920s, yeah. But my point was that had you invested in those, I think you would do quite well over the next over the subsequent, rather, 30 years or so. I think he would do exceptionally well, as a matter of fact. So it was a good bet. But in order to figure out who that would represent today, we need to figure out why they did well. Like, what technology did these companies build upon?
So we have different snaps according to Wikipedia. We have 1920,
1920 is good.
and then we have 1920 snaps from 1924 and 1925, 1928, 1929. So let's start with 1920.
Okay, I just need the list of companies.
Oh, okay. So we have the American Can Company,
Okay.
the Baldwin Locomotive Works, the Texas Company, the American Car and Foundry Company, the Central Leather Company, the United States Rubber Company, the American Locomotive Company, Corn Products Refining Company, United States Steel Corporation, American Smelting and Refining Company, General Electric Company, GE, Utah Copper Company, the American Sugar Refining Company, B.F. Goodrich Corporation, Western Union Company, the American Telephone and Telegraph Company, the Republic Iron and
That's
Steel
AT&T.
Company, the Westinghouse Electric Corporation, the Anaconda Copper Mining Company, and the Studebaker Corporation.
Oh wow, the Studebaker was on there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Anyways, well, obviously the Studebaker didn't make it, but out of those, some of those are still pretty decent companies.
Oh. And by 1929, September 14th, 1929, there are some changes.
Yeah.
Here we have, I'm going to read it because just so you can contrast
Okay.
what a decade,
Okay, go ahead.
makes. So we have the Allied Chemical and Dye Corporation. We have General Foods Corporation.
Well, you can, yeah, whatever. General Foods.
We have the Paramount Public Corporation. We still have the American Can Company. We still have, oh no, we've just added General Motors Corporation.
So they're all corporations. You can stop saying it.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm just reading straight out of
Yeah, I got it.
the list. The Radio Corporation of America,
RCA.
which wasn't there in 1920.
Yeah.
The American Smelting and Refining Company gets repeated. Now we have the General Railway Signal Company. We have added the Sears Roebuck and Company.
So the Sears.
The American Sugar Refining Company was it there in 1920 and it's repeated again. The B.F. Goodrich Corporation gets repeated
That's there.
again. We have added the Standard Oil Company of New Jersey.
Okay.
We added the
That's just Standard Oil.
American Tobacco Company.
Uh-huh.
We added International Harvester Company.
Oh, okay.
What is that? Do they make combines?
Yeah, they make combines. So it's all high tech. Actually, if you think about it, Dow Jones back then, I mean, keep going. But for that era, for that time, those are very cutting edge technologies. Like combines are cutting edge technology for 1930s.
Mm. Then we have the Texas Company, which I bet was an oil company of some kind.
Yeah, almost certainly. I don't know, but
we have the Atlantic Refining Company.
another oil company.
Yeah, and then there's the International Nickel Company.
Yeah.
So I guess we're doing more metal things.
Well, because industrialization and the railroads, the electrification with the motors for creation of the electric motors, you need a lot of nickel, you need a lot of carbon, you need a lot of copper.
Mm-hmm. And I guess these additional ones that we're going to get into, we have the Texas Gulf Sulfur Company, the Bethlehem Steel Corporation.
The sulfur thing, I believe, is a fertilizer.
Oh, okay.
Okay, keep going.
So Steel Corporation, the Bethlehem Steel Corporation, Mack Trucks Inc., whatever that is.
They're still around.
Union Carbide Corporation. Do they make carbide metal bits?
Probably, actually.
We have the Chrysler Corporation. We have the Nash Motors Company. We have the United States Steel Corporation. We have the Curtiss Wright Corporation, formerly Wright Aeronautical. We have the National Cash Register Company. We have Westinghouse Electric Corporation repeated, GE repeated.
That's crazy.
North American Company, and FW Woolworth Company.
I've never even, yeah, that's another retail. I've never looked at it specifically, but it's kind of interesting to see that. Um, because if you look at a lot of those who are very high tech technologies, like cash registers that do all the editing, subtracting for you mechanically.
Oh yeah, that allows you to more efficiently check out your customers at the grocery store or whatever store you're running, right?
Yeah. So so that would be like the Square of today's day and age, right?
Oh, yeah.
They added a lot of these tech companies, or like that car. I'm assuming that they did carbide bits for milling machines because this is when lathes and millers, which is like drill press milling machines,
Mhm.
like those Bridgeports, they came to like that was kind of a new technology back then. Basically, before you would do these things, but I mean, lathes have been existing in existence forever and a day, but
So was it one of those instances in which the prices of those things was coming down and it became widely available to the population, to the people?
it became widely used
Okay.
because before that you would use lathes for making weaponry like guns and things like that to make the barrels and such, but kind of like metal. It, access to metal like tools in everyday household wasn't that great. Like it was
Mm.
either handmade stuff or cast stuff. Wasn't a
Oh,
lot of
so
turned and machined stuff.
so if we ever got to the point where you can just 3D print stuff out of metal and plastic, it would be sort of like that, right?
Well, it would be direct parallel, but I don't believe anybody's working on a feasible 3D printing technology at this moment right now. We had like this huge jump in the 3D printing technology over the last 5 years or so, or
We
I'm
have?
sorry, 10 years.
We have?
Well, no, just in the popularity of it, because it came off patent. So the stuff that became so popular in the last, oh, I don't know, 10 years maybe, 15 years, let's
Mm-hmm.
say, with the plastic. The plastic deposition 3D printer where you just squirts out plastic in circles and shit. So that's technology that's been around since the 1980s, since the mid 80s,
Right.
and it only became popular when it came off patent in must have been 2005 or 2006, something I don't know, sometime around then, because patents are for 20 years or 22, some number of 22 years or so, and after that, anybody can make it. So as a result, it became popular, and I think the technologies like the 3D printing technology, and there is nothing else in the pipeline for a while, from what I know.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are some very high quality 3D printing technologies that places like Shapeway uses,
Mm-hmm.
those laser cinched um, technologies. But those printers cost $150,000, $200,000, $300,000, and they're patented right now. So it's
Mm-hmm.
not like somebody else can make it,
Mm-hmm.
right? But yeah, give it another 10 years, and I'm pretty sure you'll be able to buy for like $3,000. You'll be able to buy a printer that right now costs 150. You probably won't be able to buy that printer, but you'll be able to buy a printer with those capabilities for about $3,000.
Interesting. I wonder how long it'll take until we're at the stage where we can print our meatless meals with a 3D printer at home. Or
Um,
lab-based meals.
well, they are using that same 3D printing technology very effectively to print tissues.
Yeah.
So that could be, but it's still something that takes obviously forever and a day to do.
I just kind of think of Star Trek universe where you say, "Computer, please make me a sandwich. Or
Yeah,
present to me a sandwich."
but yeah, those see, they're not 3D printing that. They are using they essentially assembling molecules by converting energy into matter.
Mm.
Yeah, I always wondered how that works because I think what they're doing is they're converting energy basically into matter,
Mm-hmm.
which is possible to do, but it's a tremendous amount of energy.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess they have the ability to generate tremendous amount of energy, but I mean, you would be essentially eating, uh, you know what, like a small nuclear bomb worth of energy every time. Which is kind of true. I mean, that's what you do. You eat a small nuclear bomb worth of energy every time. If you were to release all the energy packed inside, like your standard burger, it would devastate a city. But that's just because of how energy works.
Anyways, what do you think is the equivalent? How will this decade change us? Because I feel that the 1920s was a defining decade for the 20th century because we got
So let's
all
see.
the
What became really popular are things that were new at the time, but they were necessary. So like it was well understood that people, like things like lathes and automobiles and electricity and telegraph and telephone. So what's in today's day and age that maybe is right now cool but not super popular, but that will become popular? And I think
oh
self-driving cars, like you were saying.
yeah, and I can read you what companies are in the Dow Jones today as of April 6th,
Yeah, they're boring companies.
2020. Well, we don't know. We can see
Okay.
we can estimate, or at least without reading them right now, I'm gonna bet we're gonna have some pharmaceutical companies. We're gonna have some oil companies. We're gonna have some tech companies, some fundamental tech companies like Microsoft.
Okay.
What about
Well,
you?
read it. I know Apple is in there, but I don't know if Microsoft is in there. Go ahead.
We have the 3M company.
Mm-hmm.
They
That's
make
industrial.
they make all those adhesives. And
Boring.
yeah, the Goldman Sachs Group,
Boring.
banking. We have Pfizer.
Medical.
We have American Express,
Banking.
the Home Depot,
Um,
the Procter and Gamble company. We have Apple. We have Intel. We have Raytheon. We have the Boeing.
Raytheon?
Yeah, apparently.
What the fuck is Raytheon doing there?
Maybe they're supplying electronics to
They're
the
not that
auto
large, though, are
industry
they?
or to the
I mean, they're good. They're a big
aeronautical
company and stuff.
industry.
Okay,
I don't
keep
know.
going.
We have IBM. We have the Travelers companies, which is insurance.
Yeah,
We have Caterpillar Inc. We have
which is
Johnson and
dying.
Johnson. We have United Health Group, which is another insurance company, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have Chevron. We have JP Morgan and Chase. Verizon, Cisco, McDonald's, Visa, the Coca-Cola Company, Merck and Company, Walgreens Boots Alliance, Dow Chemical Company, Microsoft, Walmart, ExxonMobil, Nike, and the Walt Disney Company.
Mm.
Interesting.
A lot of those companies I like, but all these finance companies that are on there should be gone soon enough. Like if it is going to represent, and I think it is the largest 25 companies in America, right?
Mm-hmm.
Basically. So yeah, so I think the finance sector is going to slim down over the next uh number of years,
Why
like
is that?
10 years or 15. Well, because
There's going to be a lot of money for them to make over the
how?
next 10 years. Managing the money of people who have money, of wealthy people? No, that's not true.
That's not true. Because index funds are taking over, and index funds are computer controlled, and they charge much less in interest
Mm-hmm.
rates, and they're much more competitive than either like any of these companies.
Mm-hmm.
So they're losing to the index fund on the money management front. And they
Mm-hmm.
keep trying to sell their customers, selling like, oh, no, no, we can do better. But we all know inflation is going to hit. The indexes are going to go straight through the roof. And people are going to be like, well, fuck that. I'm not going to pay 3% or 6% or whatever to my broker. I'm going to keep all the money and just invest it in an index fund. And
Right,
they
yeah.
charge like, a tenth of a percent or half a percent or something like that as a management fee, as opposed to, they have much more favorable management fees.
Mm-hmm.
So passively.
So we're really repeating history, right? We had this situation with the COVID-19 and we panicked, and then the government came in, set the interest rate at 0, and then now everyone's buying into the stock market
Yeah, so the
indexes.
market is going to inflate, but for the financial companies like banks and stuff, they can't make money on the interest rates because the interest rates are zero.
Yeah. I'm not making any money
They can't,
with
but
any
they
savings.
they're not making money either, right?
Yeah.
So, well, they are, but very little. They're not making that. So the only thing that they really make money on is on loan origination fees right now,
Yeah.
and
So they're crossing their fingers, for example, that the second stimulus package goes through.
yeah, because then they tend to make quite a bit of money on that as well.
That's correct.
But that's this year. But what about 2010,
Yeah,
2021,
that
2022?
Jamie Dimon, who is the CEO of JP Morgan Chase,
Uh-huh.
has warned. They reported earnings like a week or two ago,
Uh-huh.
and has said that their earnings will go down in the future. That they only got lucky that they had a blockbuster quarter because of the loan origination fees that they were able to
Yeah,
collect.
and I think that's the only way they'll be able to make money. Period.
Hmm.
Over the next and now see there is a lot of ah um
It's funny
if you
because
let me give advice to people first. If you can right now apply and get loans with which you can afford without putting any money down, try to put as little to no money in a down payment as possible. And if you can obtain with that any kind of property, so that doesn't necessarily have to be real property. It could also be land. It could also be gold. It can also be literally anything. This is not a financial advice. This is not a financial advice show. And yeah, so use your own brain when you do
so
shit.
this is what we're
But
doing, right?
what you should be doing is buying assets, any kind of assets. Gold. I mean, I don't like gold personally, but it's an asset and it's going to appreciate. But also other assets that don't depreciate significantly that is desirable by rich people. So if you have a lead in an antique car, and by antique cars I don't even mean like really expensive ones, but let's say a neighbor who's selling his like 1970s classic Mustang or something like that, and he wants like 17,000 for it. If you know about those cars and you think it's worth it, right now 17,000, you should buy it because it'll be worth 30,000 in 10 years. Or I can't guarantee that you'll pick the right. So you should be kind of an expert in whatever asset you choose to invest in to make sure you don't get fucked over and buy something that's not worth what you're paying for it right now. But if you get your money's worth today, your money is going to be worth, but you'll be able to preserve your money's worth over the next 10 years. And if you can get a loan for that classic car and pay it off, then you'll basically pay it off by selling it in 10 years for twice the value, again, if you get a good deal, because there's two things working in that direction. First, those cars will appreciate in value just because of their collectible quality. But second, because the value of money will literally go down, and that would work with gold. That would work with even high-end watches, things like that. Basically, anything that rich people will want to buy in the future, it was going to be worth a lot more money in the future than it's worth right now.
Hmm.
And stocks, of course, in reliable companies, same thing, right? So yeah, if you can take out loans, do take out loans, preferably spend it on real estate because that's the one thing that really won't go down, or stocks because they're nice and liquid. But if you prefer something else, you know, use your money wisely or use your borrowed money wisely so that you can
Well, those loans
get richer.
are not without strings. They have a shit ton of mm, requirements, or not requirements, but rules about what you can't do with them.
Well, no, those are business loans, but you can also just get like a car loan, for instance.
Oh, I see.
Or you can get a loan, just like a home equity loan. You can,
Hmm.
like for instance, if you have a house right now,
And your
that's
house
that's
has any
almost
equity? Yeah.
almost paid off, or completely paid off. Take that money out. Don't do another mortgage. Refinance your house. Do another mortgage. I mean, make it comfortable so you don't, so you have like 2 years worth of saving. Like, take the money out and set aside 2 years worth of mortgage payments. Put it in the bank, and just let it sit there in liquid form. Actually, better yet, put it in gold because gold will continue to be liquid. So that's your gold investment. Take that, put it in gold. It's going to sit in gold, that money, and that money is there in case you lose your job, in case you lose anything else. You can keep paying the mortgage because the house is already paid off, right? But the rest of the money, take that and put it in some other real estate, for instance. Buy another house and rent it out. Or put it in, gold, stocks, cars, something that's going to hold its value because you're basically getting something for nothing right now because of the inflation that we're going to see. And there's no way we're not going to see it with the $3 trillion now entering the monetary base.
Mm-hmm.
Because of that, we absolutely have to um, take advantage of it. Oh, now I can hear our dog barking.
Oh, he is yelping quite loudly.
Oh.
He is objecting to being left out of the room. Anyways, let's talk about a little bit more about how COVID has transformed America. Do you think with people being in their homes more frequently because the kids are home from school because schools are not operating?
Well, schools are reopening.
Are they?
Yeah, a lot of schools are reopening. That was a big, because every parent is like, oh, my children are my life. As long as I don't have to see them more than 10 seconds at a time. So false bullshit. And here's the thing that pisses me off.
Are they opening in all around the country, or is it just like regional? Like some schools are opening.
Some schools are opening, some are not. It depends on where you are. It depends on I believe the California schools are staying closed for the beginning of the semester, and they don't know how they'll project. And then the other school districts do their own thing.
Mm-hmm.
So.
So I was thinking, and this was mostly triggered by my own personal experience. Do you think people have realized that they need a home server as a result of being at home with their kids and having to share, media with them or?
I don't think most people care or understand how that would even benefit their life.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that sucks. Because, I've run out of space on my phone.
Mm-hmm.
I've almost practically ran out of space. And I wish I had a home server that was not on the cloud.
Well, we do have a home server though. You just don't use it.
That I can just select the things that I want to transfer to that home server without hooking anything up. Or
again, you can do that. We have that technology. You just choose not to use it, just like most Americans.
Oh, I see. I guess it's not become frictionless.
Well, it's not. I'm gonna pause first.
And we're back.
And we're back. We have murdered the dog. No, we didn't. But he's here and he's annoying. Anyways, so you were asking about how else the world has changed as a result of COVID.
I frequently.
I think what's happening right now in the world. Well, go ahead. What do you see?
I frequently forget that the world has changed.
How?
Because I think, you could go and do whatever you want. Like you can go take a class or you can go and socialize with your friends if you want to. But the truth is
that in many other countries who are not America, you can do that already.
Well, it sucks to be America then.
Yes, it does. It's because what happened is we really fucked up the lockdown in the sense that first we had to be dragged, I should say, kicking and screaming into the lockdown with people like Elon Musk protesting and claiming to be essential. He is not. And so on and so forth. And then we made it soft enough where it didn't really stick. But then we suffered all the economic damage of it anyway. So it's kind of the worst of both worlds. We didn't get the benefit of the lockdown, but we paid all the price of it. And that's really stupid.
What you're saying is that we did not send everybody home, right?
Well, we couldn't send everybody home because we still need to eat,
Yeah.
right? But it could have been done better. It could have been done where the government could have been very, very, very transparent with everybody about it, right? And they could have said something like, we don't know what's going on. We don't have a lot of information about this virus. The information that we have appears to be very scary. As a result, we are proposing and we will try to enforce, or we will enforce, the following strategy. We're going to send everybody home in a week or in 5 days. It should have been done faster, right? So we had a week notice, right?
Mm-hmm.
And just tell people in 1 week from now, we're going to close all the stores, all of them, for at least a week.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to close everything for at least a week. All businesses, everything will be closed for 1 week. Then in 1 week from now, we will open some stores and you'll be able to go and buy some more food and some more stuff. And then they're going to be closed again. And they're going to operate only 2 days a week, the stores.
Mm-hmm.
Even the grocery stores.
Mm-hmm.
You have a week to stock up on shit,
Mm-hmm.
right? And thereafter, we're going to sit tight for 4 weeks, for a month.
Mm-hmm.
If the only people who get to continue to go to work are people who are working in the stores, and those people will get to go to work 2 days a week instead of 5 or 6 days a week like they do now,
Mm-hmm.
and restock the stores so people can come and buy them, and work out with Walmart and all the other stores and be like, hey, you need to have surge supplies ready ahead of time. You could have worked it out. You could have had a 4 week lockdown, but to tell people up front what are your targets. So you say, okay, we're gonna stay locked down for 1 week. After 1 week, we will reevaluate. For another week, after another week, we will reevaluate, and we will base it on the number of active cases, number of hospitalizations, and number of transmissions. Right?
Oh yeah, that totally motivates people to stay home if you
And make it public and authoritative, saying this is the number as of today. We're recording everything. This is the number as of yesterday, and so on and so forth, and show people like this is the progress. We're doing good. We're progressing towards the ending of the lockdown. And I think 3 to 4 weeks, and we could have really, really stopped the transmission of this disease in America to the point where we could have safely opened up and not have to have this like second wave come through.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't know if that would have stopped the second wave.
Why? If you beat it down to a low enough level, and then after that, so you don't just sit around twiddling your thumbs for 4 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the people in the country get to do that, but all the medical professionals would have had 4 weeks to set up. Well, I guess more than 4 weeks, realistically speaking, but to set up proper testing procedures. All around America. It should have been more authoritative, more organized. It was so disorganized. Like we used, try to go get a COVID-19 test done. Like you have to search. Like there's no like authoritative website where you can go and say like, okay, where do I get tested? How much does it cost? Is it free? Like there's nothing that puts that all information together. And if there is, it's probably some kind of private organization that's doing it. It's not a government that's doing it. And in this kind of situation, this is what you're paying taxes for. You need government response in this kind of situation. Otherwise, we all die.
So the government's response has been poor. There's no government website where you can go to get information about it.
And of course, we'll be, by the way, sorry to interrupt you, but it will be challenged by a bunch of libertarians who'll be like, no, you don't need the government. People will take care of it on their own. Free markets, rah, rah. And the thing is, that will work in a village of like 5,000 people. You can be libertarian about it, and everybody can gather together and say, hey, this is a good idea. This is what we're going to do, blah, 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 right? In a country of 360 million people, or 328 officially, but I think it's more. In any case, in a 300 million people country, that doesn't work. It doesn't fucking work. You need an organized strategy on how to respond to this. It doesn't work if some people have a better idea, or some people don't believe that it exists, or some people believe that the world is flat, and as a result, it can possibly affect them somehow. I don't know. The point is that we needed an organized response. I'm not saying it had to be a government coercion response. It could have been the kind of response where the government just simply, through its openness and honesty, convinced the overwhelming majority of the population that it's a good idea.
To opt to be conservative, right? Because a lot of people, in real life are either conservative or really like optimistic. I mean, pessimistic or optimistic. And since we don't know much about this virus, we're going to opt on the side of conservatism.
Yeah,
being
and the
pessimistic.
political divide in this virus is completely fucking preposterous because it should be all the conservatives, all the right-wing people in America who should be like, oh, this is bad. Like,
Being pessimistic about
yeah.
this situation.
And had it happened on Obama's watch, that's exactly what they would have done, by the way.
Yeah.
That's exactly what they would have done.
But instead, they're out there saying, "Oh, it's no big deal. Why even wear a mask?"
Yeah, because of our. Oh yeah, now the idiot in chief is wearing a mask, and now as a result, everybody else gets to wear a mask, and it's hilarious to be like, "Oh, masks are stupid. Nobody should wear a mask. Don't you know that wearing a mask will cause you to die in a matter of moments from hyperventilation?" And then like 10 seconds later, it's like, "Oh yeah, masks are cool." I don't know why I changed my mind. I don't know. No, I didn't change my. I meant it all along. Now, give me a second. I need to go back and delete all my tweets.
Really?
Yeah, because people are fucking. Because he's like their religious leader, and they're like, oh, let me conform to whatever he says now.
Well, maybe he
Somebody convinced him to wear a fucking mask. Thank God.
Yeah. I was gonna say maybe it's okay to change your mind if you see some convincing evidence.
No, for him, yeah, I want a president who will change their mind based on facts and evidence and arguments. Yeah,
but
that's a great
it
thing.
takes a while for those facts and evidence to travel down the line, or
No, but and
maybe he's just a stubborn.
he's a stubborn piece of shit, and he didn't want to admit that he was wrong, and he never did admit that he was wrong. He just pretended like, instead of saying, "Hey guys, I had it wrong. Masks are actually a really good idea. We should all wear them. If you didn't wear them before, go for it." He did it in a traditional like, "Oh yeah, some people were telling me blah blah blah, and now I think this is the way to do it, and I was telling it all along, by the way." But sir, here's tweets about not wearing masks, and here's tweets about you making fun of people. Oh no, that's fake news. Those are not my tweets. I know they say that there's a blue check mark and they come from my account, and I did write them, but no, they're not my tweets. That's fake news.
That's funny.
Yeah, it's fucking.
You know what else? COVID-19 probably did. It helped people realize how lonely they are. Hold up in their apartment or house, and disconnected from people they might be, or how connected they are on the opposite end.
Well, I mean, and I think that's part of the reason why we have all these riots happening right now.
Is it fueled by loneliness and alcohol?
It's fueled by having nothing else to do.
Okay.
I mean, it is mostly fueled by having nothing else to do for the most part.
I see.
Yeah, a lot of these people are on unemployment, and a lot of these people are protesting. Like, I think it started the riots and the protests, I should say. The first we had the protests, then we had the riots. The protests were a good idea. The protests were started as a response to
George Floyd.
Well, yeah, but it's generally as a response to police brutality and
yeah.
cops just doing a really shit job policing in some communities, and that's a solid reason to start a protest. But then it kind of devolved to now Black Lives Matter used to be about, hey, let's not kill black people just randomly in the middle of the street. That sounds like a really good thing that I think pretty much everybody can get behind, right? But now Black Lives Matter is about supporting transgender rights and about supporting non-traditional families, which actually I'm fine with because the way they are talking about it, but that's something else. But also Black Lives Matter is now about ending ending blind auditions in orchestras so that way you can get more black people into orchestras.
What?
Yeah, that's like and you know, or ending ending blind, not, it's not blind audition, but ending basically race neutral considerations for for theatrical roles,
Mm-hmm.
where like, oh, now every theatrical production has to have black people in it regardless of whether or not there are roles for them, or whether or not well, a black person can play any role in a production, right?
Mm-hmm.
If it's not like a race based thing, if this is just like a modern day play where it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
matter what race people are,
Mm-hmm.
there's no point. Obviously anybody can be in those roles, but and like so Shakespeare, for instance, also is a historical role. The race there doesn't really matter. So a person of any ethnicity can be, Romeo or Juliet, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it doesn't matter. Like the race part doesn't really play a big deal there in the play. But there are some community like playhouses now that are going into this like Antifa ideology of like, we need to prop up all races except the white race, and which is not really a race. Um, and where it's going now, it has really departed from the Black Lives Matter into some kind of rather extreme ideology.
I think it's important to support minorities, but not if you go out of your way to support minorities. Everyone is part of the community, and we should be just simply be supporting the community. Maybe
Well,
it's ignorant, maybe it's
let's
like
take a
politically incorrect, but if you have like 5 restaurants, in a community, um, and
oh yeah, now it's racist to cook food that's not part of your culture.
but what if you're all cultures? I don't know.
No, it's racist.
Why?
So yeah, totally racist.
Where are you
That's
getting
according to
your
BLM. No, read their fucking website. Read their goddamn website.
Where are you getting your news?
No,
You
read their website. It's on their fucking website.
okay.
In their goals. It didn't used to be there. It used to be about, hey, let's not shoot black people. That matters. Yeah, we can get a yep. Let's definitely, let's not do that.
So we are becoming a more segregated world instead of becoming a more like
But now there are some people who
unified world.
now in what do you call it? Washington State, in Seattle. Goddamn, Seattle fell out of my brain. In Seattle, they had black only areas where only black people could go.
Really?
Yes.
Why do we end up segregating people in these like racial problems?
Because the only two people in the world, the only two types of people in the world who care so deeply and so all encompassingly about race are, for some reason, the racists and the anti racists.
So they're the same people.
They're the same fucking person.
Yeah.
They're the same goddamn fucking person, right? In the middle, you have a bunch of naive, gullible young people who have been sitting inside the house for a very long time and who now see that this is their opportunity to participate in the movement of their era. But the movement of the 1960s were peaceful, silent protests, or like the Million Men March to Washington, led by Martin Luther King, right? You know what? They were fighting for their rights to go to school, and they burned down 0 buildings
Mm. Hey, how would you
in the
create?
process.
How would you create a more
And they got it.
inclusive society without singling out any one particular member of your community or society?
So okay, let's take as an example.
Because what I feel is happening right now is that they're singling out people just based on their race.
Yeah, which is
And it's
like
weird because
racist.
it makes you sort of like self-conscious and sort of like, what the hell? We want to be part of the community, not like sore thumbs in the
I mean,
community.
look at the terminology. What do racist people call brown people?
People of color.
Colored people.
Yeah.
What do anti-racists call them? People of color. Oh, they reversed the order of the words. No, it's not an insult at all to be classified as not an individual and a human, but just a wide member of an enormous population of other people.
Yes.
Or I should say, a faceless member of a wide variety of other people.
You know, it's funny because we're all just Americans. Like, I don't want to be singled out because of my race. I want to be singled out because maybe I'm an asshole or a bitch or something, but not because of the color of my skin.
Yeah. We had
Or-
a speech about it, and a black man, I was told, had a dream about it some time ago.
Or because of what I eat or what language I speak. You know, I'm just a human.
Yeah.
Not, you know, a special human. I just happen to be born the skin color that I am.
So just so people don't think that we're glossing over the nuance of this, like I was trying to propose, let's take as an example the orchestra situation. So I believe this is coming from New York, but I might be mistaken. But in any case, they have their orchestra organization, and now there's people who are proposing that they end blind auditions
What's a blind audition?
for the orchestra.
What's a blind audition?
So a blind audition for the orchestra is you come in as a player,
Yeah.
and you play. They give you like some sheet music, and you play your sheet music, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the people judging and people giving you your score
Mm-hmm.
don't know who you are. They can't see you.
So you're behind a curtain
You're behind
or
a curtain or
something.
whatever, yeah. Or maybe you send in a tape nowadays. I don't know. And then you get to interview in person or something like that.
Oh, I see, like an audio tape.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Not a tape, obviously, but an
Like-
MP3 file.
Yeah.
Or WAV file or whatever. So,
Now what's happening is
That-
that they're
but-
removing the curtain.
but the important part, hold on a second. The important part is that came to be back in the either 90s or early, I don't know, some number of years ago. That came to be because black people and women, especially women,
Mm-hmm.
were upset that they were underrepresented in the orchestras
Mm-hmm.
and they couldn't get jobs. And the underrepresented actually is a bullshit argument. They couldn't get jobs even though they were highly qualified and good at what they
Mhm.
do, right?
Mm-hmm.
And to prove that point, they switched to blind auditions, and all of a sudden, women and Asian people became far more common in orchestras.
Mm-hmm.
Boom. However, black people did not become more common in orchestras, right? And people say, oh, well, that's racist. It must be racist against black people. But they're not racist against women and against Asian people, men and women, I
Right.
suppose.
Right. So the pool of candidates, I imagine, must be a lot smaller than women and.
Yeah, there's
Asian
far fewer black
ethnics.
men who play classical instruments,
Yeah.
or black women for that matter,
Yeah.
who play classical instruments than there are Caucasian or Asian
Right.
women. Maybe you have to have an Asian in your genes in order to no.
But first of all, black people with black skin make up like 15% or less of our total population.
They make up
right?
14% of the population, but also they're very musical people. Black culture has contributed quite significantly to our musical genres.
They don't gravitate towards classical music.
Exactly.
They gravitate.
And what are you gonna do? Force them?
Yeah, towards
Like,
pop.
I want to see what the next step in this is. Like, we take away the blind audition, and now it's now you're just judging people based on their race. You're like, oh, can you hold a violin? You're black? Okay, you're in. Okay, so you get through that point,
You
right?
know, there's actual scientific study that shows that when you are observing somebody perform a piece, especially classical music, your experience is altered by the visual aspect.
I know. I
Then
read
when
the study.
then when you listen to a piece.
Yeah.
So I would be interested to see what happens when
Well, no, but
when the judges start judging people based on their visual performance.
the study actually was able to show that less enthusiastic players
Mm-hmm.
that actually were more proficient and better at actually performing music.
Mm-hmm.
Because you remember when you look at an orchestra is not a solo.
Yeah.
So nobody really gives a fuck how you look while you're performing in an orchestra.
Right.
I mean, you can't dress like a hobo, but you get the point, right?
You're
not supposed to
you're
attract
a
attention to
piece
yourself.
of
You're
an
supposed to
entire
be
ensemble.
exactly.
Yeah.
You're an instrument in an
You're a
orchestra.
piece of a puzzle. You're a cog in the machine.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a bad argument, right? Where that was for pianists, the study,
Mm-hmm.
and for pianists it makes a big difference, I think, and I think a more flamboyant pianist who may not be as technically proficient can still be a better performer than a super technically proficient but kind of a robotic looking pianist, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's an experience. But for somebody like I don't know, a bass player or cello player or somebody like that, or violin player who's like violin number 1 out of 10 or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't really matter that much.
Well, I agree.
So in orchestras, and then what they're doing is they want to plug these roles, and they want to put a bunch of more people of color in the orchestras. But the problem is that if your pool of talent isn't that deep in that in that area, then I really want to see what the next step is, because again, we take away the blind auditions. And then still not enough black people come to orchestras. And then what are you going to do? Start kidnapping them from the street and forcing them to play? I mean, at some point, if people don't want to engage in a certain activity, you're not going to force them to. Now, the nuanced counter-argument to that, and there is a counter-argument to that, but it's a nuanced counter-argument, is that if you have certain people who are particularly talented or who can exhibit talent in certain, like for instance, like a certain violinist, right?
Mm-hmm.
If there were more black violinists, then maybe black kids could see themselves as violinists and maybe become more interested in, that particular. I'm not really certain why we need more orchestras to begin with. I'm not really a fan of orchestra, but the point is, if it appeals to some people and they can see a role model that looks like them doing it, it's more likely that they will do it as well, right?
Yeah.
But I don't think you can force that issue. What you can do instead is find some really talented existing black orchestra performers, and maybe just shine some spotlight on them and promote it in such a way that
it becomes enticing to
enticing
to young adults or to
Yeah.
children who may want to follow that path.
But if you still fail after after a while,
good effort at PR. For
yeah,
that
if you still
profession.
fail, I mean, the black people are enormously popular and contributive to jazz, to rap, to many aspects of popular music.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and look at another side. White people are incredibly underrepresented in the NBA.
Mm.
So let people do the things that they like doing.
I wonder if social justice warriors are currently standing behind Kanye West with his interest in running for president of the United States.
No. They think he's doing it to support Trump, which he
Really?
probably is. Or well, he's insane, so he's probably doing it because he's insane. But
Well, isn't
Also to
that
support Trump.
contradictory to his? He's black. Why can't we blindly support black people in whatever they decide to do?
oh no, but he's a traitor as a black person. I
Okay.
mean, to them. To me, I think he's just by insane. I mean, I think he's not all right there
Oh, okay.
in his head.
Historically, black people in power have voted against their own people.
Well, of course.
Like,
And anybody
Because-
who challenges that, look up how the projects in Chicago were created.
yeah. It's a little sad. It happens in all in like a lot of communities, like Hispanics, Hispanics who have a lot of power
Because
also
money is thicker than blood.
frequently vote against Hispanic people. So there's a lot of black and brown people who are prejudiced and
But that's
racist against
you
their
know,
own people.
but they're not. They're not. That's an important thing to notice. They're not.
Oh, okay. So maybe they're just not standing on the side of laziness or lower social order.
No,
What is it then?
it's for the same reason that many white politicians have voted against the interests of white people.
What is it? Just for power?
Yeah, money and power. They don't give a fuck about the people. None of them do. You point out to the black and you're like, oh, look at those black politicians voting against their fellow black people. Yeah, but look at all those white politicians voting against their fellow white people. I don't think it's like that. I think it's just politicians, period, voting against the interests of the populace, period.
Mm-hmm.
That really is the situation. Just corruption.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to put race-colored glasses on the corruption. It's just straight up corruption with a bit of racism sprinkled in there.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what's really going on there. But yeah, you're right. Anytime prominent black politicians get into power, they kind of fuck over their own people. But like I said, every time Italian politicians would get into power, they would fuck over their own fellow Italians. Every time the Irish people would get into power, they would fuck over the Irish.
So this is true of all politicians.
Yeah, you get into power and you fuck over your own people.
They get a little power hungry or a lot power hungry, and all of a sudden they're siphoning as much power from the people,
of course,
as they can.
Yeah. You use the people as an excuse to collect money for some kind of do-gooder program, and then you siphon money off of that. It's like Chicago politics 101.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Hey, how else do you think the world has changed, or at least the United States?
I don't think it really has changed that much. I think you're really overblowing how much it has changed, because I think people don't see it as being that different.
I don't see it as being that different, except that.
So why do you insist that things have changed?
I have to wear a mask. Well, now there are no services. I mean, now people are ordering food to be delivered to their houses instead of going out and hanging out with their friends.
So change has happened. Well, first of all, people are still hanging out with their friends. The ones who don't care about the coronavirus or think that it's fake.
Yeah.
Right? And then there's plenty of other people who just hang out with their family more often because, close group of people. Quite honestly, I think it should be relatively safe for you to hang out with your friends. Like if you have, I don't know, let's say you have 5 friends, right?
Yeah.
That you hang out with all the time, that you see all the time. Because most people don't have that. Like, most Americans have like one friend maybe. Right?
Really?
Yeah, like that's the statistics. Like a real friend, right? And then maybe some Americans who are a little bit more popular, maybe they'll have like 2 or 3 friends, right? I'm not talking about well-wishers. I'm just talking about actual friends, like people who you call and talk to on a regular basis, or meet and talk to on a regular basis, right? So it's not that big of a deal for you to actually meet with those, because chances are, because of that statistic, chances are, if you have, let's say, 2 friends, chances are those people, you are there, one or two friends, right?
Yeah.
So like you are a group, and as long as you stay in your group, you can hang out all you want in your group, because if everybody in your group is diligent about not getting sick, and you happen to get around and drink every just talk in your house or have dinner parties or something like that, that's normal. That's fine. Right? We have to understand that the lockdown has failed. We're still under lockdown. We should do our best, but you can't institute completely draconian lockdowns anymore. You had the opportunity to do that for a very short period of time as the government, and now you kind of fucked it up, so that's out of the window. Now you have to make the lockdown as pleasant as possible so people would at least try to avoid spreading the disease. Right? Which is why it's idiotic when they
Do you see? I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Finish your thought.
Well, it's idiotic when they do things like, oh, now you have to wear masks outside in a park. Why?
Or at the beach.
Or at the beach. Why?
Yeah.
I mean, the sunlight kills it, the air kills it. Well, not, the air doesn't kill it, but like it's just such a large volume of air. So as long as you're not sitting shoulder to shoulder to somebody at the beach, if you're at least 10 feet away, you don't need a fucking mask.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you're hacking your lungs out. And if you're hacking your lungs out, then
You shouldn't be out in
don't be
public.
outside.
Yeah. So what you're saying is that the world has not changed at all, except we have to wear masks, and there's a big political drama playing out.
I think the world is significantly underestimating the probability of a real live revolution happening in the next 2 years, but possibly next 2 months.
Mm.
My money is on the next 2 months, to be honest. 3 months.
You're a pessimist.
I'm a pessimist, so on an optimistic side, I'll give us 3 more years before that happens.
Okay.
Right?
Why is that?
Well, because look at the rest of the world. Look where it's happening. America.
What do you mean by the rest of the world? I mean, in America here, we have a real crisis. There are people who don't have enough money to actually live, and they have to figure out how to, get assistance from other people.
And that's different in the rest of the world because.
It's not. But in America, you had a certain expectation that you wouldn't
Yeah, so your bubble just bursted.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all that happened. Nothing. Not when you keep saying what has changed, nothing has changed. Other than people have recognized that the shit that I was telling people all along is actually true.
Mm-hmm.
Our economy is not doing great. It's not. We're not getting wealthier. We're getting poorer.
Because we have to work multiple jobs just to make the same amount of money.
In 1960s, you could raise a family on a single income. Let's keep the money out of it. You could raise a family on a single income, a single 40-hour job, 40-hour-a-week job. You could raise a family. You could have a house. You could have maybe even a swimming pool. If your job was a little bit better, maybe a little bit higher class. You could have cars, like 2 cars at least. Your wife could stay home, or I'm a proponent of whichever side makes the more money should stay home. But back then it was primarily the wife, right?
Mm-hmm.
The woman, and raise the kids,
Mm-hmm.
right? Now you are not able to do that. If you want a middle class lifestyle, both of you must work.
Yeah.
Must. It's not an option not to work, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you have to send your kids to preschool, which is preposterous. Preposterous. They don't get to see you at all. Terrible, right? Single family households are really strapped, but the even dual head or dual parent households, they're both working. That's not progress. That's not progress when you keep in mind that in the same period of time, now we are working more hours. Like, for instance, back in the 1970s, wealthy upper class people, lawyers, doctors, professors, people like that, were less likely than the lower classes, garbage men, plumbers, so and so, to work 40 hours a week.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, generally speaking, the more money you got paid, the higher class you were in the little letter,
Right.
the fewer hours you worked.
So the more leisure time you
The
had.
more leisure time you had.
Yeah.
Right? Which, some might say, well, that's not right or whatever. It doesn't matter. The point is that as a society, we had...
It was normal that the more money you made, the more money you invested in leisure time.
Exactly. And but also on top of that, you had the opportunity to do so, right?
Yeah.
Now you don't have the opportunity to do so. Now, if you're a lawyer, you're working 80 hours a week. For one of the large companies, if you're a doctor, you're working 80 to 90 hours a week. If you're, no more doctors visiting their patients, that doesn't happen anymore. I mean, unless you pay through the roof for it. Basically all of the higher end professions now require you to work a lot of hours.
Is it because there's more competition, or what? What's driving
The
this?
corporations are basically squeezing every dollar they can out of you,
Mhm.
essentially, while still paying you handsomely.
Mhm.
But they're paying you handsomely, but they want to squeeze out all the money out of you,
Mhm.
right? Because they know that nobody will do that job for $60,000, so they'll pay you like $300,000, but they'll make sure that they squeeze $300,000 worth of value out of you. Well, they probably do twice or three times that.
Mhm.
But um, with lower class jobs, and I only call them lower class because of how much money people make, as opposed to because I think a plumber is actually more important than an attorney, to be perfectly honest. Because when your toilet stuffs up, an attorney is not going to help you much. But well, unless yeah. But the point
Unless
is
it's a Renaissance attorney.
exactly. But um, my point is that in those jobs you would work more hours so you can have more money, right? And now those hours are quite limited.
Yeah.
It's quite hard to find work for a lot of those. Well, if you're a plumber, you're doing okay because there's fewer and fewer plumbers.
Yeah.
But for instance,
Tradespeople.
yeah, but if you are a coal miner, you're pretty much fucked. If you are, and coal miners, service people, service personnel in those coal mines, they're also kind of fucked. They get less and less jobs, less and less resources. Their wives have to go and work to supplement the income, and so it goes. And all of this happened because we stopped manufacturing shit in United States. And the reason why we stopped manufacturing shit in United States is very simple, because there was no more growth. We done all the growth in the 70s. And
Mhm.
remember that how in the 70s we have that thing, and then the inflation went up and people went crazy and they were buying things as soon as they could be producing things. And then in the 80s we had like the really high, um, uh, really high interest rate to break the back of the inflation, as it
Mhm.
says in that article that we were reading.
Mhm.
Um, so from the 80s on, we basically stopped manufacturing things in the United States.
Mhm.
And the reason for that is because all these corporations, all these large corporations that were manufacturing things in the United States, recognized that we have reached maximum capacity for productivity essentially at that point for
Mhm.
those corporations.
Mhm.
The only way you could increase profits is by pushing down on the costs,
Mhm.
right? And main costs for those corporations were human resources, were people,
Labor.
labor. So first we got women into labor, which is fine, but I'm not saying women shouldn't have been working, but I think we should still limit it to a single working human from a household, whichever human that is, because I think children need to be raised by a parent, and it would actually be I think it would be pretty reasonable for people to, like, for instance, if we moved to a situation where instead of having dual income households,
Mhm.
each family would be, and this is me just spitballing an idea, uh, like, I don't know, like maybe together you can only work 40 hours a week,
Mhm.
right? So you can have part-time
Working
jobs,
adults. Yeah.
two part-time jobs. The wife works, the husband works. They take care of the kids. They still get plenty of time together and with the kids.
Yeah.
That seems great, right? We could have gone that route.
Mhm.
We could have gone that route. That route meant slower growth. That route meant admitting that we can't hold on to the growth obligations that we built into our models.
Mhm.
What that means is that a lot of people wouldn't get to retire. A
Mhm.
lot of people wouldn't get their little retirement bonuses and checks in those corporations. And those people, not out of racism or sexism or anything else, but out of pure greed and self interest, said, fuck that. Let's move these jobs to China. Let's
Mhm.
move these jobs to Mexico. Let's move these jobs to India. Wherever we can put these jobs, let's move those jobs there. It will be really good for us for the next 10, 15 years. After that, it'll probably be dead, so fuck it.
Right.
And that's what it really was. I mean, if you look at the 90s, we did economically very well in the 90s by exporting a shit ton of jobs to China.
Yeah.
But
And then in 2000s, we outsourced customer service to Philippines and India.
Yeah.
The middle of the country, Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
And now here we are at a crossroad again, where we realize that
Well, now it highlighted how much we're dependent on China.
Yes. We shouldn't be making our pharmaceuticals in China.
Well, we shouldn't be. I was going to say we shouldn't be making anything in China. That's not correct. Um, we shouldn't. Um, well, we shouldn't be making anything in China. I'll go back to that statement. Yes, we shouldn't be making anything in China.
But every single modern economist will tell you that is a terrible, horrible idea.
Yeah, every single modern economist is a moron.
Yeah, because that creates isolationist,
I'm not saying be
isolationist
isolationist. That's the difference.
policy.
I'm not saying be isolationist. I'm saying we should be able to make. This comes to my tariff idea, my idea of a sliding tariff. So the idea should be that we should make all the products that we can make for our own use, to use in our own
Economy.
in our own economy, to use for our own purposes. And that doesn't mean that we can't buy some items that China has to offer.
Yeah.
Maybe they produce something that we just don't have in America, right?
Right, but that's always been the case,
Yeah.
Jack.
So
Note, that's always been the case.
I don't understand. Yeah, so it's always been the case that the China produces things, or America used to produce a lot of things and sell it to the rest of the world, right?
Yeah.
So at some point we had a very advantageous position. We used to produce like 45% of all the crap that was sold in the
Was
world,
sold in the world. But
right?
nowadays, it seems like if Colombia makes really good coffee, Colombia will export the nice coffee to the rest of the world, to Sweden, to America.
See, that's fine because that relies on their specific talent, right?
Mhm.
They have a certain, by talent, I mean their geographical talent.
Mhm.
So they have a certain soil, they have certain, things. So there's nothing wrong with Colombian coffee, with cashews from Georgia, or from, or for that matter, cashews from California, which are quite good, or
Mhm.
avocados from California, right?
Mhm.
Like geographically speaking. But in terms of human resources, it used to be that in
You're talking specifically about manufacturing.
manufacturing,
You're saying,
yeah,
we should bring manufacturing back to the
yeah.
United States. Every T-shirt, every shoe, every screwdriver should be made in
Well, at least a
America.
copy of. So I'm not saying Americans should only wear. Let's take T-shirts for instance,
Mhm.
right? I'm not for instance. Let's take T-shirts that are made out of cotton.
Mhm.
That cotton is more likely than not grown in America, primarily because of the subsidies that we pay the
Right.
farmers, but also because we actually do have land that is particularly well suited for growing cotton,
Mhm.
right? So that could be a strength of America. We can export a lot of cotton. Doesn't mean we'll grow all the cotton in the world, but we'll grow enough cotton to for ourselves and to export, right?
Mhm.
We can make most of the T-shirts in America, but if 20 to 30% of the T-shirts in America come from other countries, yeah, that's okay. Maybe they make some stuff that we don't, right?
Yeah.
And maybe they'll want some of the stuff that we make that they don't make, right?
Right. Yeah.
But it's very unhealthy when
You're importing 100% of all the things that you
pretty much need,
consume.
yeah, and you're
Yeah.
exporting financial services. Oh, fuck that shit.
The entire country of the UK has been doing that for a very long time.
Yeah, and that doesn't work out. That makes you into a dead society. Because here's the thing: what happens to people who can't engage in the financial services industry? Because either they are not educated enough, and then people say, well, that's why education is so important. But what if they just fucking don't want to because it's boring as fuck? What if there's a person here in America who says, "Oh, I would love to work at a company that manufactures things. Maybe I love to run me a CNC machine or a pick and place machine, or learn how that works. I would love to become a welder and manufacture things, right?"
Mhm.
Okay, well those people are fucked
Mhm.
because there's no jobs for them.
Mhm.
Because all those jobs, there's no role models for them, let alone jobs. All the role models that they have are in their 60s dying, or 70s.
Right.
So, and we fucked over our entire country. It's kind of like, over specialization. Think about it this way: the Greeks really have it right. The ancient Greeks, the current Greeks, have nothing right. The ancient Greeks had this right, where they wanted they thought that a well balanced human was the epitome of being a human, right? They didn't they
Of
had
being a successful human.
yeah, they had all these gods, right?
Yeah.
But all their gods were flawed because their gods were specialized. Zeus was powerful but angry and not very wise,
Mm-hmm.
and Athena was smart but they couldn't throw lightning. And they had all these different gods, and none of them were considered to be perfect. Right,
Mm-hmm.
but what was considered to be perfection, something you should aspire to, is to be a man, because women are inferior, according to them. But also to be a man that is brave and strong and powerful and smart and kind and politically active and well educated and versed in music and versed in science and versed, or in that case, physical arts and all these things, right? So they emphasized a balance between all those things, right?
Yeah.
If you become a country that really only provides financial services, you become like this weird, deformed little creature that only has maybe one good arm that swings around a little. Like that's the thing. Like that's what America became. Like this weird, deformed little creature who can't even maintain um, its own existence.
Right, like a crippled creature.
Yeah.
That.
Like the analogy that I like to say is, if tomorrow aliens came down and just obliterated the entirety of the United States from existence, right? Just boom, like and then they just erase United States. China would be mostly okay. I mean, it's going to be a huge hit, of course, turmoil, blah blah blah, scared. But let's say the aliens evaporate us and then come back and say, no, no, we're only destroying the United States. Don't worry, live your lives. Goodbye. We'll never
Mm-hmm.
see you again, right?
Mm-hmm.
China would be like, oh, okay, we're kind of fucked on those loans we gave them and some other things, and our economy is going to suffer, but mostly we're going to be okay, right? If the same exact thing happened, only instead of America, it was China who got obliterated, the aliens come down, obliterate China, say, go, go, USA, democracy rules, communism rules, and then just fly away and everything else, we will be royally fucked.
Mm-hmm.
Because so much of the stuff that our shit relies on is made there that it's not even funny. We would be royally fucked. And so would the rest of the world. There is something very wrong about that, except Germany. And that's the thing. Why can't we be the fucking Germany? Why can't we be Germany?
In order to be Germany, I think
Because we're too fucking greedy. That's why.
it's necessary for workers to own part of the corporation
Yep.
that they are working in, and for the culture to be one that's a little bit more collective than individualistic, like it is in America.
That's probably true, though. I wonder if you can still maintain the individual. I mean, we had a moral. See, you're probably right in that, because even though people will scream that back in the 70s and the 60s and the 50s we had like this individualistic culture in America because people tried to imagine America that way, but we probably had a much more collectivist culture back then than we
Mhm.
do now, as a matter
Mhm.
of fact. It's You can't see it as much, but it wasn't communist though,
It
right?
was not
It was still capitalist.
because
But it was more just more cohesive.
and I believe, in order to succeed, you need a web. You need a network of people to help you succeed.
Yeah.
It's never just going to be you. It's always going to be you and a team of people.
Yep.
It's going to be you and an entire village helping you achieve your goal.
Yeah. That's why people criticized Obama for saying like you did not build that, his little quote, but what he was really meant by that, and probably everybody knows what he meant by that, and they just want to pretend like they don't. But that you don't build a corporation by yourself. The CEO of the corporation, like Elon Musk, didn't build shit for Tesla. There's a
Right.
lot of talented, very talented engineers, very talented designers, very talented marketing people who organized and built that company. And
Mhm.
he's just went around bullshitting about that company. So really dislike the man.
Right.
But
He's an excellent promoter.
yeah, but
he,
I still hate him.
He may not be a very good engineer or a very good
Human.
human.
But anyways, I don't care about him. The point is that he didn't build that company, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people built that company,
Yeah.
and it took a combined vision of many, many different people, including many different people who have a lot of stock in that company.
Yeah, they're faceless,
Um,
nameless people to us.
Yeah, but the problem with the modern day corporation, the way it is right now, is there's zero accountability in these corporations for things, and I think that's what drives this little individualism, because individualism comes with lack of responsibility and lack of accountability. I
Mm-hmm.
feel, meaning we first become a society that has very little accountability, very little responsibility, and then we become individualists to justify it.
I'm just trying to remember the title of that book about heuristics, about the numbers that I read so many years ago. That said that large corporations would rather choose other large corporations
Oh
in
yeah.
order to avoid accountability.
Oh yeah,
E-
well that's on a human side. Um,
But when you look at corporations closely, you will find that this is a widely rampant problem.
it's widely true, but it's widely true for individual reasons. Meaning, it's widely. I shouldn't say it that way. For individualistic reasons, maybe it's widely true because people who work for those corporations make it true. So I'll make an example. Let's say you are in a company and
I found the book.
uh-huh.
I'm sorry. It's called Risk Savvy by somebody named Gerd Gigerenzer. I think he's a German professor of some kind. It says, a new eye-opener on how we can make better decisions by the author of Gut Feelings. In this age of big data, we often trust that expert analysis, whether it's about next year's stock market or a person's risk of getting cancer, is accurate.
Well, that's a
So,
that's a book about statistics.
yes.
Um,
But it well explains how we make decisions, like humans
yeah.
as a whole.
And the corporations are nothing more but conglomeration of humans, but it's a structure that specifically promotes bureaucratic humans with very little ability to think for themselves, above those who do have ability to think for themselves and want to.
Mm-hmm.
And by when I'm saying think for yourself, I don't mean like think about yourself. I think I'm proposing think for yourself, meaning think from first principles, try to analyze the situation, try to understand the situation. Don't just repeat mindlessly what you heard somebody else say.
Very few humans, I and myself included, sometimes are really lazy thinkers about, the risks and the possible risks of a situation. Because sometimes we opt to just be optimistic or pessimistic about things. We never weigh the risks and the possible rewards of a situation.
Yeah, that's probably true.
And some people just have innate ability to think through everything really quickly and make decisions on the fly.
Making decisions is difficult. Uh, it's difficult for everybody, I think. But if the more you analyze a decision and the more you create criteria based on which you can make a decision, I think the easier and the better the decision is. But in any case, in our case, in America's case, I don't know what's going to happen in the next couple of years. But what we have is we have a huge amount of inequality in terms of how much money people make, in terms of financial inequality. And of course, people will try to dismiss that, saying, no, well, we're still better off today. Yeah, that doesn't matter because people can only perceive relative inequality. People don't really care about absolute inequality or absolute quality of life.
Yeah, they often say, well, you have more, even poor people have more resources and more goodies than, French kings and queens of the 17th,
Yeah, no one cares. The way the
1700s.
human psyche works, it's all relative.
Yeah.
That's just human psychology.
Yeah. It doesn't matter if you have a flushing toilet and hot water
Yeah.
available to you.
It doesn't matter, indeed.
Yeah.
But the thing is also, it's only getting worse. It's only getting worse because we need less and less people. And we were reading.
What do you mean we need less and less people?
Well, we do need less and less people in everyday production.
Oh,
This
I
is
see.
how.
I see. So what you're saying is that we should learn to value human labor far above anything else, and pay humans for their labor
Or recognize the
adequately.
fact that maybe labor will not be the criteria by which we will distribute resources in the future.
Mm. So what you're saying is it's time to rethink capitalism.
Well, not necessarily eliminated. I like where Ray Dalio is going with his idea. So even though he's not laying them out as specifically as I wish, but um, he is right in the sense that in the future, if we stick to the idea, for instance, that people must work,
Mm-hmm.
right? Otherwise, we're not going to pay for anything. Nothing's going to help. People must work. If they don't work, and as based on that, we create a bunch of make work. Maybe we even bring back manufacturing here to the United States, and we start making manufacturing, but we'll bring back it to like the level that we had at, where people are still manufacturing things by hand, for instance, right?
Mm-hmm.
If we do that, and another country, let's say China, for instance,
Mm-hmm.
becomes fully automated,
Mm-hmm.
and then says, "Well, we are communists, so we're just going to start paying people money
Mm-hmm.
to just exist." And then some people will innovate and work hard and create companies with these automated robots making all the products themselves, of course, right?
Right.
And those people will be the elite, and everybody else will be the peon. And you may dislike that, or you may hate that system, right? You may say, well, that system is too authoritarian, and I'm glad I live in America.
Mm-hmm.
Except if you keep the world open, and if you keep trade, then they're just going to dominate because they don't have that cost. They don't have that labor cost. They can just pump out products as fast as they want to. Well, as fast as their robots will pump out the product.
Mm-hmm.
But they have the ultimate competitive advantage. They can do things much cheaper than you will ever be able to do. And then you have to rethink capitalism from two perspectives because one of these two pillars will fall in the future. Either you have to distribute resources based on something other than labor, or you have to give up on globalism and go back to protectionism, right? And give up on this whole idea that only the most efficient producers will should produce the products and everybody else should buy from them, because that idea will be destroyed by a producer that just doesn't need any labor,
Mm-hmm.
any people,
Mm-hmm.
right? And those people who say, "Oh, well, that's just never going to happen," they're simply stupid.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to argue anymore with that case. They're simply stupid. If you still want to argue about that, look at how much we've progressed in 100 years. Imagine 100 years forward if your imagination provides it to you, and understand that general purpose computers, general purpose AI computers, while may not be over the horizon, specific purpose AI computers will be here, and they will put you out of a job no matter what your fucking job is within the next 100 years.
Mm-hmm.
Probably within the next 20 years, but if I was to hedge my bets, I would say 100 years. And then you can say, "Oh, well, I don't care about it because blah blah blah." Well, yeah, okay, you may not care about it because you'll probably be dead by then, because you sound like a moron if you say something like, "I don't care about that." If you say, "I don't care about humanity in 100 years because I'll be dead by then fuck you, quite honestly. Go put a gun in your head and pull the trigger right now, because we don't need you on this planet to take up resources. And oh yeah, and I highly
I
encourage.
really love your honesty here.
So,
No
anyways,
sarcasm.
oh no, there's no sarcasm. I encourage people who are useless dregs in society to kill themselves, because I am pro-suicide. I think you should kill yourself and rid the humanity of your dead and bloated carcass. Because if you're not trying to make this world better in some kind of practical way, not by burning down elks, but so then they burned down a statue of elk in Portland, Oregon. Beautiful, nice elk. I don't know what the fuck they burned it down for, or dragged it down and destroyed it.
Okay.
Anyways, I'm saying, like, if you're not trying to make the world a better place after you leave here, right? If you're only living for yourself, then please give us all a favor and just kill yourself.
Dun dun dun.
That's the end of this podcast. I mean,
No. Okay.
okay.
So next time we'll talk about What shall we talk about?
Other people I hate.
No, how to build a fair and just society.
Well, I don't know how to do that.
Well,
I think we should start working on that, but I have no idea.
yeah, well, we can explore some important topics or some questions regarding how to build a fair and just society that is, not reliant on human labor.
Well, it really comes down to distribution of resources, right?
Yeah.
We have all the resources. We don't have unlimited resources. We have limited. If we had unlimited resources, I guess it would be mostly.
Give everyone $1 million and see what happens with.
Well,
with
see,
those people.
it's not possible to have because dollars are useless. We have unlimited number of dollars. We can print as many as we want to.
Units of money.
Well, yeah. So we have unlimited unit, but that's not what I mean. You're missing the point. Units of money is just the units of exchange.
Yeah.
By unlimited resources, I mean, do we have? We can't have unlimited. We can't have a world with unlimited resources. Basically, we can have unlimited energy.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's realistic.
But
that which will give us unlimited water, for instance,
mm-hmm.
That's realistic as well in the next 100 years,
Mm-hmm.
right?
And will it solve global warming?
Hopefully.
Okay.
But do we have unlimited land?
No.
Do we have unlimited power? Human power, like ability to control other humans?
No.
No, right? And what do people primarily want? They want a place to live,
Mm-hmm.
and they want prestige. Do we have unlimited prestige?
Which they get through their work.
Which they get through their work, but do we have unlimited prestige? By the very definition, we can't, because it wouldn't be prestigious if it was unlimited, right? So people derive meaning and prestige out of their work, and then they convert the units that are assigned to them through their work for some resources, land, etc., etc., etc.
Right. Yeah.
And we need to figure out how to distribute it better. There's some ideas floating out there. Like, for instance, for prestige, you can have worldwide or nationwide or statewide competitions where people compete and get certain scores, for instance, right? And then based on that, you get better or worse. I'm not proposing this as an idea. I'm just saying that's one of the ideas that's floating around there. Maybe it's a good idea. That maybe we go back to that ideal human of the ancient Greece, where you have like competitions where people compete on their ability to create poetry and throw a javelin and run 100 meters and participate in a wrestling competition and fly a drone and God knows what else, right? And then they are judged and assigned certain scores, and based on your score, maybe you get more or less resources from society and more or less respect from society. That's one idea that's floating around there. That's maybe something that's 500 years into the future where we definitely don't need to do shit. Maybe that's what we're going to do.
Food for thought.
Yeah.
No?
For sure.
I'm pretty much done with what I have to say.
Yeah, I think we're pretty much good. This is a good place to end. Next time we can not talk about COVID-19 anymore, but because quite honestly, it's just more annoying at this point, because every change that you or other people, like this is pretty common, point out, like, oh, the world has changed in this way or that way. It's just frustrating because it's like, no, it hasn't. You people just noticed it now. It's like standing in front of a red wall, pointing at people and be like, that wall is red. And everybody's like, no, it's blue.
Okay.
And then like
I was just taking it as a moment to reflect on how the world, on the changes that have occurred as a result of this pandemic. And yes, most lives continue to be normal, but there are some, nuances that have changed. There's some small things that have changed.
So obviously many things have changed, practically speaking, right? So some people lost their jobs. Some people lost their businesses that they worked really hard on, right? Some people died from the COVID-19, right? So many changes happen. But I'm talking about societal changes, right? On a societal level, changes.
Zero.
Yeah, or economic changes. Again, I think pretty much zero.
Yeah.
People will say, well, no, it's not zero, it's blah, blah, blah. But it is kind of zero because if you look at it, like, were our corporations unstable and on the verge of bankruptcy in 2019?
Yes.
Yes. Were people on the verge of bankruptcy at all times?
Yes.
Yes, for the most part.
Mhm.
Well, that hasn't changed. Were there some employees who were utterly useless at their job, and now those people work from home because they were deemed non-essential? Yes.
Yes.
Now they just work from. Now they browse Facebook from their house instead of browsing Facebook from their place of employment,
Mhm.
and they're still equally useless.
Mhm.
It's all useless. It's all garbage.
Mhm.
Like all the changes were made.
Yeah, I still want the world to be a better place after this COVID epidemic, but it doesn't seem like it is.
Well, how can it be? Well, see, here's the thing. Maybe the world is going to be a better place because maybe this is going to cause Donald Trump to lose the election, but then we're going to get that fucking Biden in who could barely remember his own name.
But maybe he'll have a mastermind that is nice.
No, because he's
Comforting
getting
him.
that fucking Kamala Harris to be his
Oh.
VP.
Oh.
That's pretty much settled right now.
Oh.
And he hasn't announced it yet, but if that bitch becomes the VP, then
Forget about it. The level. Of
well, I don't know.
the
I really
level of
hate her.
corruption, You know,
I really
and the
hate that woman.
And the crackdown. You should give her an opportunity. And the crackdown.
No, fuck that shit. She had an opportunity. She tried to prosecute the innocent people.
Right, and marijuana is never going to become federally legal.
No,
under her.
oh my god. She's as conservative as they come. I don't even know why they call her, why she's a Democrat. But the same thing is true for the DNC, for the Democratic National Convention, for those fucks.
They're very
Like,
conservative.
they're as conservative as they come.
All they want, they're like the Alan Shore conservative.
Yeah, from the
Boston Legal.
Boston Legal is a show, yeah. It was popular back in the day.
My favorite quote is like, Democrats are simply are people who want to give money to the poor so that they don't come and pitchfork them in their high towers.
Yeah, that's pretty much what it is. That's pretty much what Democratic Party has become. The Democratic Party was supposed to be the party who cares about the poor people. They don't give a fuck about poor people. They just care about themselves. And it just makes me angry. It makes me angry because also the universe itself pretty much delivered a win to the Democratic Party on a platter this year with the whole COVID-19 and such.
And they managed to go and fuck it up.
And they managed to possibly fuck it up. Had they basically chosen anybody who was not fucking demented,
Senile.
demented is a different idea, yeah, senile, and
And they had so many options for young candidates who.
Nope. They chose to go with a senile dude
different.
and a woman who tried to prosecute innocent people or tried to withhold evidence of innocence about actually innocent people in order to put them in jail so she can prolong and improve her career. She didn't do so personally, of course. It was done under her while she was the head of the department, but I will blame her anyway because she sounds like exactly that kind of bitch.
She is very ambitious. And she has had no qualms about using every single strategy or tool available to her.
Yep, and those kind of people can go fuck
climb
themselves.
herself all the way up to.
Yep, Kamala Harrison as well. Put a gun in your head and pull the trigger. Die.
How?
Fucking hate her. I fucking hate her. I fucking hate Biden. And I fucking hate Trump. I hate all three of these people.
Oh, they jibbed Bernie Sanders.
They jibbed Bernie Sanders. What's his name? Andrew Yang got fucked over. Tulsi Gabbard got fucked over. But Biden and Kamala Harris. Oh my fucking.
Anyways, we're going to check out.
All right. Goodbye, everyone.
See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.